Damian Okoye walked through the halls of his mansion like a silent storm, cold, disciplined, and unreadable. Every step echoed on the polished marble floors, accompanied by the faint ticking of antique clocks and the hush of air conditioning. The mansion itself was breathtaking. High ceilings, wide staircases, chandeliers of crystal, but it always felt quiet, as though everyone inside was holding their breath. The staff lined up respectfully whenever he passed. Maids, chefs, gardeners, cleaners. No one ever looked him in the eye longer than a second. That wasn't a rule, but it may as well have been. His presence commanded obedience. A raised eyebrow from Damian carried more weight than 1,000 shouted words. His most infamous instruction had been given on his first day moving into the mansion. No woman enters my bedroom. Not for cleaning, not for maintenance, not for any reason. People thought it was oddly specific, even unreasonable, but no one dared question him. When he repeated the rule years later, his tone carried something like warning. My room is my sanctuary. My privacy is non-negotiable. Some whispered rumors. That had been betrayed by a former lover. That a woman had once stolen something from his private space. That he had trust issues. That he simply hated emotional vulnerability. But no one truly knew. He had never allowed any woman inside that room, not even his ex-girlfriends. If he brought a date home, she was escorted only to the guest rooms, never beyond the locked corridor. Inside the staff quarters, the rule was repeated to every new employee like scripture. Whatever you do, never go near the master's room at night. The mansion functioned like a finely tuned machine. Perfect schedule, perfect silence, perfect respect. And Damian liked it that way. He never flirted. He never laughed. He never wasted words. To him, emotions were vulnerabilities. Walls were safer than bridges. But on the day Elaine arrived, small suitcase in hand, eyes full of uncertainty, something shifted in the atmosphere. She greeted the other workers politely, unaware of how much attention her presence would eventually draw. She didn't know she was entering a house ruled by fear and order, one that centered around a single iron decree. The bedroom is forbidden. No one, especially not a woman, was meant to cross that invisible barrier. And yet fate had something else planned. Because the man who never allowed any woman near his private space was about to make his first and only exception. Elaine adjusted quickly to the rhythm of mansion life. Quiet steps, lowered gaze, submissive etiquette. She worked with delicate care, as though every object was sacred. Whether dusting vases or straightening curtains, she moved like a gentle breeze, noticed but unobtrusive. But there was one thing no one knew. Some nights, Elaine wandered. Not out of boldness. Not out of curiosity. But out of a subconscious drift her mind could not control. Sleepwalking. She had done it since childhood. Her mother used to find her curled up in the wrong room, sometimes in the hallway, sometimes outside on the porch. But Elaine kept the secret because she feared rejection. And tonight, her condition would change everything. Past midnight, the mansion was silent. The cleaners slept. The cook snored softly. And Damian's private floor remained untouched and forbidden, just as always. Except, Elaine rose from her bed, barefoot, her face tranquil and mind fogged in dream state. Her eyes were half open, unfocused, unaware. She drifted through the hallway like a ghost. Her movements were slow, innocent, inevitable. Her hand came upon the forbidden door. The door Damian never allowed any woman to cross. Without hesitation, without awareness, she turned the knob and slipped inside. Damian was asleep, for once not restless, but not deeply either. He heard something, a whisper of movement, the faint brushing of fabric. He opened his eyes slightly, and saw a figure approaching the bed. Elaine. She didn't speak, didn't turn on a light, didn't ask permission. She simply lay down beside him, gently, instinctively seeking warmth. Her small frame curled against his chest, her breathing calm and even, like a trusting child, a resting angel. Damian stiffened, stunned, frozen. No woman had ever been in his bed. For a moment he considered waking her. For a moment he considered being angry. But something unusual happened. Something primal, human, soft. He felt her heartbeat, steady and soothing against his ribs. Her presence was warm, comforting, real. For the first time in years, Damian felt something loosen inside his chest. The loneliness that had built up like stone cracked. He exhaled deeply and closed his eyes. He didn't push her away. He didn't call security. Instead, he gently rested his arm around her. The sun crept through the tall curtains. Elaine shifted slightly in her sleep, unaware of where she truly was. Damian was already awake, watching her breathe softly and peacefully beside him. He felt no anger, no intrusion, only a strange calmness he had never allowed himself to feel. Unbeknownst to them both, footsteps were approaching. A tray clinking, a knock. And soon, a discovery that would shake the household. Morning arrived softly. Not dramatically, not loudly. Just a gentle warmth pressing through the curtains. And painting the room in pale gold. Elaine stirred slightly, still asleep. Her cheek resting on Damian's chest as though she belonged there. Damian was already awake. He hadn't pushed her away. Hadn't moved her. Hadn't called anyone. Instead, his hand rested lightly at her back. As though protecting something fragile. For a moment he simply watched her breathing. For a moment he allowed silence to exist. Without tension. 2 staff members approached the door. James the butler and Martha the head maid. Along with a younger kitchen assistant balancing a breakfast tray. They always entered at the same time every morning. 8:03 am. With precision. James knocked twice. No response. Martha frowned softly. Maybe he's still asleep? James hesitated. Damian was a man who disliked being disturbed. But breakfast was routine. They knocked again. Still silence. Finally, James unlocked the door. And stepped inside. The tray never made it to the bedside table. Martha froze mid-step. Her eyes widened. The younger staff nearly dropped the tray. On the bed. Elaine. Sleeping. Beside Damian. Wrapped in his arm. The most forbidden sight. Martha gasped softly. James whispered. Oh, dear Lord. It was like witnessing a myth break. Like seeing lightning fall upward. Like reality glitching. No woman had ever been in his room. Much less in his bed. And Damian was awake. Looking right at them. He didn't pull away. Didn't look guilty. Instead, he spoke in a calm, steady voice. Set the tray down. Quietly. James obeyed, hands trembling. The younger assistant set the tray on the table and bolted out of the room, running to tell the rest of the staff. You won't believe what I just saw. Downstairs. Whispers exploded like fireworks. She was in his bed? Holding him? He allowed her? Has he finally chosen someone? The staff clustered in tight corners, voices lowered but urgent. Some were scandalized, some amused, some suspicious, and some jealous. Back upstairs, Elaine shifted in the bed, stretching a little. She blinked slowly, still waking up, then froze. She wasn't in her servant quarters. She wasn't even in a neutral hallway. She was in the billionaire's bedroom. In his bed. Her face burned with shock and embarrassment. She shot upright. I am so sorry, I don't know how, I didn't mean. Damian gently took her wrist. Elaine. Breathe. She did. Barely. He cleared his throat and spoke with control. You were sleepwalking. That's all. She looked mortified. I didn't know. But he shook his head. It's fine. His voice was softer than anyone in the house had ever heard. Elaine stood awkwardly, still piecing together the night. The rules had been shattered. Not by rebellion, but by innocence. And Damian felt something he hadn't felt in years. Comfort. Attachment. Maybe even affection. The fortress of privacy had built was breached, not by seduction, but by trust. And this was just the beginning. The mansion did not calm down after breakfast. If anything, it vibrated with gossip. Servants exchanged looks in hallways. Whispers ricocheted off marble floors. Every corridor felt like a secret waiting to be repeated. Damian was aware. Of course he was. This was his house. No whisper escaped him. But he didn't shut it down. Didn't yell. Didn't threaten. He simply let the house buzz. Because for once, he didn't care. He sat behind his oak desk, staring not at documents, but at space. His mind kept returning to her face. To that moment when she woke in confusion. When her eyes lifted to meet his. She didn't look manipulative. Didn't look ambitious. She just looked scared. And he had wanted, with a startling primal instinct, to calm that fear. He never felt that with anyone before. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in. James entered, posture rigid. Sir, there is a matter we must discuss. Damian didn't lift his eyes. Is it about Elaine? James hesitated, caught off guard. The staff are unsettled, speculating. Some are suggesting favoritism. Others? Damian finally looked up, sharp. James. The butler froze. Yes, sir? You have served me for 10 years. Tell me honestly, do you believe I have lost control of my judgment? James swallowed. No, sir. Never. Then trust me. James bowed his head. Of course. Before leaving he paused. She seems afraid of disappointing you. Damian blinked, surprised by how much that statement affected him. She what? Elaine tried to work. Truly tried. She scrubbed linens with trembling hands, trying to ignore the whispers around her. 2 maids pretended not to stare. Is it true? Were you really in his bed? Elaine flushed pink. I was sleepwalking. They exchanged skeptical looks. And he didn't wake you up? He didn't send you away? Did he touch you? Elaine stood suddenly, dropping the linen. Stop. Her voice wavered. Not aggressive, not loud, but firm. The maids blinked, startled. Elaine continued. You weren't there. You don't know what happened. Don't make up stories. There was a moment of silence. Not from fear, but respect. The maid stepped back. Elaine resumed her work. But inside, her heart was a storm. Hours later, as she carried folded sheets through the corridor, someone approached. James. Miss Elaine. She froze. Yes? He handed her a small handwritten card. She recognized the handwriting. Damian's. Read. Meet me on the terrace at sunset. Elaine looked up slowly. Is this an order? James smiled faintly. No, Miss Elaine. I believe it's a request. Soft orange light draped the stone terrace. The sky was a quilt of blush and gold. The world felt quiet enough to breathe in. Damian was already there, leaning on the railing. He turned as she approached. You came. Elaine nodded. I didn't want to be rude. He almost laughed. That's a first. People usually come because they're afraid of me. She glanced at him carefully. I'm not afraid of you. She paused. Not anymore. He absorbed that. Then gently. Elaine, what do you think happened last night? Her throat tightened. She spoke honestly. I think it was an accident. He nodded slowly. Yes, but I also think it was meaningful. She swallowed. Meaningful how? His voice was low, sincere. Because you slept beside me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. Elaine looked at him. Really looked. And for the first time, she did not see the billionaire. She saw the lonely man behind him. They stood side by side in the fading light. Not touching. Not speaking. Just existing. And something unseen. Something quiet and powerful was beginning to form between them. Not lust. Not scandal. Not rumor. Something deeper. Something that frightened her. Something that steadied him. The mansion would keep buzzing. The staff would keep whispering. But none of it mattered. Not while the sun set. And Damian and Elaine breathed the same calm air. On the edge of an impossible future. The next morning something had shifted. Not just for Elaine, but for everyone. The mansion felt different. More alert. More charged. As if the walls themselves were waiting to see what Damian would do. Damian entered the dining room at precisely 8 a.m. Not with his usual brisk efficiency, but with a quiet certainty. The staff lined the room, awaiting instructions. They bowed slightly as he sat down. James approached to pour the coffee, but Damian lifted a hand. Well, wait. A ripple of confusion. Wait. For who? And then, Elaine entered. Slow steps. Head down. Hands folded. She looked like she might be walking into a courtroom. Every eye drifted to her. Damian pulled out the chair beside him. Not across from him. Not at the far end. Beside him. Sit. Elaine hesitated. Maids gasped quietly, but she obeyed. Damian addressed the room. Elaine is not to be mocked, questioned, or harassed over last night's incident. She is under my protection. The room froze. Under my protection. Those words changed everything. A young maid swallowed. A guard shifted his weight. Martha raised her brows in shocked realization. Elaine stared at her plate, cheeks warm. For the rest of breakfast, the staff moved around them with new awareness. They didn't gossip. Didn't stare. Now they were careful. Respectful. Almost afraid. Damian didn't speak much. But every so often his glance flicked toward Elaine, making sure she was all right. She felt it each time. Like a silent reassurance. After breakfast, Damian gestured to her. Walk with me. They left the dining hall together, the staff parting in their wake. They stepped into the garden. Quiet, sunlit, fragrant with morning dew. Elaine spoke first. You don't have to shield me from them. Damian stopped walking. I'm not shielding you from them. He turned to her. I'm shielding you from the cruelty of assumption. She blinked at him. He continued. People like to fill gaps in their knowledge with the ugliest possibilities. I won't allow that. She felt emotion gather in her throat. Slowly, quietly. Why do you care? He paused. A long pause. Then, softly. Because someone should have cared about me when I was younger. No one did. I won't repeat that mistake. Elaine felt tears prick her eyes. She looked down. I'm just a maid. He stepped closer. You are not just anything. Her breath caught. Later that day, the staff waited for Damian to leave the house for business. But he didn't. He stayed home. Worked from his office. And everyone knew why. Elaine was around. He took breaks just to pass by where she worked. Sometimes only looking at her. Sometimes asking how she was doing. And every time she answered shyly, like she didn't know how to stand in this new light. That evening, Martha approached Elaine in the hallway. Not with hostility, not with accusation, but with sincerity. "He's different with you." Elaine froze. Martha searched her face. "He has never looked at any woman the way he looks at you." Elaine's pulse raced. She stammered. But nothing happened. Martha raised a hand gently. "It doesn't matter if something happened. What matters is that he cares. In this house, that is rare." Elaine didn't know what to say. Martha smiled softly, almost kindly. "Be gentle with him, child. He seems stronger than he is." That night, when Elaine lay in her small room, she stared at the ceiling. She thought of the terrace at sunset, of breakfast at his side, of his voice saying, "You are safe here." And somewhere inside her, something bloomed. Not love, not yet, but a warmth, a hope, a quiet thread tying her life to someone else's. And in his much larger room on the west wing, Damian lay awake as well, thinking of her presence, her voice, her innocence, and the meaning of a single accidental night. He turned on his side, exhaling slowly. He didn't feel alone. Not anymore. Days passed, but not quietly. Something invisible, yet palpable, floated between Damian and Elaine nonstop. A tension that wasn't hostile, nor uncomfortable, but electric. It lingered in glances, in silences, in moments where neither spoke, but both felt. Elaine tried to avoid him, not because she disliked him, but because proximity made her heart betray her. Every time he passed by, she felt heat bloom across her cheeks. She would look at the floor, pretend to be deeply focused on dusting, or rearranging flowers, or folding napkins that did not need folding. And every time, Damian noticed. From his office doorway, Damian watched her polish a marble table. 3 times in a row, he leaned on the doorframe. "Elaine." She jumped slightly, hands freezing mid-circle. "Why, yes." He nodded to the table. "If you continue, you'll polish straight through the stone." Her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I just like doing things well." He stepped closer, voice gentler. "You don't have to work harder when I enter a room." She didn't dare look up. I wasn't." "Elaine." She froze. Slowly, she met his eyes. A moment of unspoken truth passed between them. Her fear of perception, his fear of appearing predatory, and both of their fear of naming this thing building in silence. Later that afternoon, as Damian reviewed accounts in his office, Elaine approached the door. Not because she was called, but because she finally had to speak. She knocked gently. "Sir?" He looked up. For the first time, he shook his head. "Don't call me sir." She hesitated. Then, "What should I say?" He answered softly. "My name." The word frightened her more than any reprimand could. Damian." Her voice quivered on the syllables, and his heart, though outwardly calm, felt that quiver like a strike of lightning. She stood in the doorway, twisting her fingers. "I wanted to thank you for protecting me." He rose from his chair. "I didn't protect you because I had to." He stepped closer. "I did it because I wanted to." Her breath caught. She looked at him, really looked, and this time it wasn't with confusion or apology. It was with budding trust. He held out his hand, not commanding, not insisting, just offering. Elaine stared at it, slowly. She lifted her own. Her fingertips brushed his palm. Not a full hand clasp, not a firm connection, just a touch. But that touch contained every unsaid feeling, growing between them. And Damian, the man no woman had ever touched without permission, closed his eyes for half a second, just to feel it. Unbeknownst to them, Martha passed the hallway at that moment. She saw the almost held hands, and for the first time, instead of shock or disapproval, she smiled, quietly, knowingly, like someone witnessing fate take root. That evening, Elaine folded clothes in her room, but her mind wasn't on linens, or chores, or reputation. It was on the warmth of his palm. Meanwhile, Damian sat by his bedroom window, staring at the night sky. He whispered aloud, as if testing the sound of the truth. "I care about her." It was not a declaration of love. Not yet. But it was the truth. And truths have a way of changing everything. The mansion was quiet. Too quiet. Even the usual hum of servants moving about seemed muted. It was as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Elaine had spent the day in restless thought. Every time she passed Damian's office, she felt her heart stumble. Every glance, every near touch, every shared moment of silence had grown heavier, more meaningful. And Damian, he was just as aware. That night, the garden felt alive with the glow of lanterns. The fountains shimmered under the soft light, and the scent of blooming jasmine floated on the warm air. Elaine was alone on the terrace, nervously twisting her fingers. Elaine. Damian's voice broke the silence. She turned to see him approaching. His hands in his pockets, eyes calm but searching. You've been avoiding me, he said softly. What? Elaine's voice trembled slightly. I don't know what I feel. It's confusing. Damian stepped closer. The distance between them narrowed. Every heartbeat felt amplified. I don't expect you to understand it all yet, he murmured. But I need to be honest about how I feel. Elaine's eyes widened, her breath caught in her throat. Damian took a deep breath and continued. I didn't believe anyone could matter to me. Not for years. But you've changed that. I don't know when it started. But I care about you. More than I thought possible. Elaine froze. Her mind raced. Her heart thundered in her chest. She began. Damian, I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything. He stepped closer still, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. Just know that you're not alone anymore. Not with me. Not in this house. Not in my life. Her lips trembled. Tears formed in the corners of her eyes. I've never felt safe with anyone before, she whispered. Then let me be your safety, he said quietly. Let me care for you. For a long moment, neither spoke. They simply stood there. The garden lanterns casting a soft golden glow over their faces. The jasmine scent wrapping around them like a cloak. Finally, Elaine lowered her gaze, then slowly lifted it to meet his. The fear that had clung to her melted, replaced by a tentative trust. I care about you too, she admitted, barely above a whisper. Damian's hand lifted, lightly brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, tender, and charged with emotion. Then we begin, he said softly. Together. And in that moment, the world outside ceased to exist. The mansion, the staff, the gossip, the rules, all faded. There was only Damian and Elaine. And the undeniable connection that had quietly been building. Since that night. The night that changed everything. The morning sunlight spilled into the mansion's hallways like liquid gold. Yet, even with the warmth, there was a tension in the air. The staff had seen it. They all had. Elaine's closeness with Damian was no longer a secret. And while some whispered, others watched silently, learning to adjust to this new reality. Martha had been the first to approach Elaine privately. Child, she said, her voice softer than usual. He cares about you. You must carry yourself with confidence now. Elaine had nodded, swallowing hard. Her hands trembled slightly as she continued her chores. But there was a spark of pride beneath her nerves. Even James, the butler, had changed his demeanor. Where once he had been distant and rigid, now he offered subtle nods of approval whenever Elaine passed by. The other staff were slower to adjust. Some were still skeptical, whispering in corners. But slowly, the mansion's hierarchy began to acknowledge a new order. Elaine was no longer just a maid. She had Damian's trust. And that trust commanded respect. Damian observed the changes from his office. He noticed the staff's subtle hesitation, the lingering gazes that shifted when Elaine entered a room. He didn't intervene. He allowed the social dynamics to settle naturally. It was part of the lesson, not just for Elaine, but for everyone who worked under his roof. And yet, whenever he walked past her, his eyes lingered just a little longer. His expression softened when he caught her glance. There was a silent promise in that look. You're safe. I am here. Later that afternoon, Damian found Elaine in the garden, arranging flowers for the terrace. Elaine, he called gently. She looked up, startled, but smiled shyly. I thought I'd find you here, he continued. These flowers, he gestured toward her hands, you've chosen wisely. Elaine's cheeks flushed. I just wanted to look nice, she whispered. He stepped closer. It does. But it's not just the flowers, it's you. You make everything better. She lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. Her heart raced. She could feel the intensity of his gaze, the way his words wrapped around her like a protective shield. That night, the mansion hosted an informal gathering of business partners. Elaine assisted quietly, moving from room to room, ensuring everything was perfect. She felt Damian's presence behind her constantly, a silent support, not controlling, not intimidating, just there. Some staff watched with a mixture of jealousy and awe, but the couple's bond was undeniable. It was clear, Damian and Elaine were no longer just master and maid. They were something more, something stronger. After the guests departed, Elaine found herself on the terrace again. Damian joined her silently, leaning on the railing, looking out over the gardens. Do you ever worry about them? She asked softly, nodding toward the mansion. The staff? He replied. No, they'll adjust. They always do. She smiled faintly, feeling comforted. And us? She whispered. He turned toward her, eyes steady. Us is something we handle ourselves. No one else's opinion matters. Elaine's heart soared. For the first time she felt truly equal. Not in wealth, not in status, but in mutual respect and understanding. And as the night settled over the mansion, Elaine realized that the path ahead would not be without challenges. But with Damian by her side, she was ready to face them all. The mansion had never been quieter or louder in terms of emotion. Every whispered rumor, every curious glance, and every subtle judgment from the staff now hovered around Damian and Elaine like a constant shadow. And neither of them could ignore it anymore. That afternoon, a luxury car rolled up the driveway, gleaming under the sun. Elaine, carrying linens toward the west wing, froze. "Sir, your guest has arrived," she called softly. Damian, entering the hall at that exact moment, raised a brow. "Ah," he said coolly, "let's see who dares to disturb my peace." A woman stepped out of the car, elegantly dressed, confidence radiating from every movement. She was striking, tall, fair-skinned, with carefully styled hair and an expensive designer suit. A business associate, yes, but her gaze lingered on Damian longer than professional propriety allowed. Elaine's chest tightened. Something about the way the visitor looked at Damian made her heart pound with unease. Inside the mansion, Damian introduced the guest with courtesy, but Elaine could sense the subtle tension. "Elaine, this is Miss Vivienne Laurent," he said, his tone formal but polite. Elaine nodded, barely able to keep her composure. Vivienne extended a hand toward Elaine, but it wasn't a friendly gesture. Her smile was polite, but her eyes glinted with subtle rivalry. "So, you work here?" Vivienne asked, her voice smooth, almost amused. Elaine's fingers tightened on the linens. "Yes, ma'am," she replied softly. Vivienne tilted her head as if appraising her, then glanced at Damian with a sly smile. Elaine felt her pulse quicken. The first real challenge to her position in Damian's life had arrived. Damian noticed Elaine's discomfort. He leaned slightly toward her, a subtle shield against the guest's piercing gaze. "Elaine," he said quietly, "don't let her unsettle you. You belong here and no one can change that." Elaine felt a wave of relief wash over her. His words were soft, protective, but also commanding. It was a reminder that, despite external pressures, Damian's loyalty was unwavering. The meeting began in Damian's office, with Elaine assisting by passing files and drinks. Vivienne maintained her poised, confident demeanor, but Elaine noticed small jabs, subtle comments designed to undermine her. "I hope the staff here are competent," Vivienne remarked, eyes flicking toward Elaine. Elaine's heart leapt, but she kept her voice steady. "Yes, ma'am. I'm confident everyone is prepared." Damian glanced at her, a hint of pride in his expression. He knew the subtle battle unfolding, and Elaine was holding her ground. After Vivienne left, Elaine found herself on the terrace once more. The golden light of sunset bathed the stone in warmth. Damian joined her silently. He didn't need to speak. The tension of the afternoon hung between them. "You did well," he said softly. Elaine looked down, cheeks flushed. I was afraid." She was so confident. "And clever." "Fear is natural," Damian replied. "But confidence, grace, and truth will always outlast intimidation." Elaine lifted her gaze. "And us?" she whispered. "Us is stronger than any challenge," Damian said, voice low and steady. He reached for her hand, entwining fingers with hers. "No one can take this from us." That evening the mansion felt lighter. The staff whispered less, watched less. Elaine knew Damian's silent support had shifted everything. As the night settled, they stood together on the terrace. No words were needed. The gentle hold of hands, the quiet presence, the mutual trust, spoke louder than any confession or declaration ever could. And deep inside, Elaine realized, external challenges might always arise, but their bond, built on trust, protection, and shared vulnerability, was unshakable. The mansion had settled into a quiet rhythm, but tonight felt different. It wasn't the usual calm of routine. It was alive with anticipation, warmth, and understanding. Damian stood on the terrace, gazing at the twinkling city lights below. Elaine approached silently, her footsteps soft against the stone floor. "You've been quiet," she said softly, dark eyes reflecting the night sky. "Thinking," he replied simply. "About everything. About you. About us." Elaine's heart skipped. She knew the words he didn't speak carried weight heavier than any she had ever known. Damian turned to face her. "Elaine, these past months have changed me. You've changed me. I built walls around my life, my heart. But you." He paused, swallowing the words that felt too fragile to let fall too quickly. "You've taught me that trust, care, and even love can still exist. And I don't want to go back to the man I was before." Elaine felt tears prick at her eyes. "Damian," she whispered, almost afraid to say the words aloud. "I love you," he said, voice steady, low, but carrying the full weight of his emotion. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't overdramatic. It was honest. Elaine's lips curved into a smile, tears slipping freely now. "I love you too." From that moment on, the mansion felt different. Not because anything had changed physically, but because their relationship had finally been acknowledged. The staff slowly accepted it. Martha nodded with quiet approval. James no longer hesitated when Elaine passed. Even the skeptical maids and assistants began to treat her with respect rather than judgment. The whispers faded. Instead, there was recognition. Elaine was no longer just a maid, she was part of Damian's world and he was part of hers. The next days were filled with quiet joys. Shared breakfasts on the terrace. Soft laughter echoing in hallways. Walks in the gardens where conversations flowed easily. And the subtle, unspoken understanding that they were partners in life as well as heart. Damian, once a man isolated by choice, now welcomed Elaine into every corner of his life. And Elaine, who had once been timid and unsure, now moved through the mansion with confidence, grace, and the knowledge that she was loved deeply. One evening, standing together under the starlit terrace, Damian took Elaine's hands in his. "Whatever comes," he whispered, "whatever walls or challenges we face them together." Elaine nodded, leaning into him. "Together," she echoed. The night wind carried their laughter softly across the gardens. The city lights glimmered in the distance. And for the first time, both of them knew that no mansion, no rule, no gossip could ever break what they had built together. Their love wasn't just in words or stolen glances, it was in trust, in care, in the quiet moments between them. They were free. Not just in wealth or status, but in heart. And that freedom was everything. If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe for more of the story. See you again in the next story. Thank you for watching.